Hello. This will be chapter 2 of The Chimes by Charles Dickens, abridged by me. The letter Toby had received from Alderman Cute was addressed to a great man in the great district of the town. The letter positively seemed heavier in Toby's hand than another letter. Not because the alderman had sealed it with a very large coat of arms and no end of wax, but because of the weighty name on the superscription and the ponderous amount of gold and silver with which it was associated. How different from us, thought Toby, in all simplicity and earnestness as he looked at the direction. As to snatching tripe from anybody's mouth, he'd scorn it. His children, said Trotty, and a mist rose before his eyes. His daughters, gentlemen may win their hearts and marry them. They may be happy wives and mothers. They may be handsome like my darling mare. He couldn't finish the name. The final letter swelled in his throat to the size of the whole alphabet. Never mind, Trotty. I know what I mean. It's more than enough for me. And with this consolatory rumination, trotted on to the mansion of Sir Joseph Bowley, Member of Parliament. The door was opened by a porter, such a porter, not of Toby's order, quite another thing. The porter underwent some hard panting before he could speak, having breathed himself by coming incautiously out of his chair without first taking time to think about it and compose his mind. When he'd found his voice, which it took him a long time to do, for it was a long way off, he said in a whisper, "Who's it from?" Toby told him. "You ought to take it in yourself," said the porter, pointing to a room at the end of a long passage. "Everything goes straight in on this day of the year." Knocking at the room door, he was told to enter from within, and doing so found himself in a spacious library, where at a table strewn with files and papers were a stately lady in a bonnet, and a not very stately gentleman in black who wrote from her dictation, while another and an older and a much statelier gentleman, whose hat and cane were on the table, walked up and down with one hand in his breast, and looked complacently from time to time at his own picture, a very full length, hanging over the fireplace. "What is this?" said the last-named gentleman. "Mr. Fish, will you have the goodness to attend?" Mr. Fish begged pardon, and taking the letter from Toby, handed it with great respect. "From Alderman Cute, Sir Joseph." "Is this all? Have you nothing else, porter?" inquired Sir Joseph. Toby replied in the negative. "You have no bill or demand upon me? My name is Bowley, Sir Joseph Bowley. Of any kind, from anybody, have you?" said Sir Joseph. "If you have, present it. There is a cheque-book by the side of Mr. Fish. I allow nothing to be carried into the new year. Every description of account is settled in this house at the close of the old one, so that if death were to cut," suggested Mr. Fish. "To sever, sir," returned Sir Joseph with great asperity, "the cord of existence, my affairs would be found, I hope, in a state of preparation." "My dear Sir Joseph," said the lady, who was greatly younger than the gentleman, "how shocking!" "My Lady Bowley," returned Sir Joseph, "at this season of the year we should think of ourselves. We should look into our accounts. We should feel that every return of so eventful a period in human transaction involves a matter of deep moment between a man and his banker." "But upon my word, Sir Joseph, I don't think I can let it go after all. It's so very dear." "What is dear?" inquired Sir Joseph. "That charity, my love. £5. Really monstrous." "My Lady Bowley," returned Sir Joseph, "you surprise me." "But you are the poor man's friend, you know, Sir Joseph. You think otherwise." "I am the poor man's friend," observed Sir Joseph, glancing at the poor man present. "And as such, I say, I may be taunted. As such, I have been taunted. But I ask no other title." "Bless him for a noble gentleman," thought Trotty. I don't agree with cute hair, for instance, said Sir Joseph, holding out the letter. I don't agree with the Filer party. I don't agree with any party. My friend, the poor man, has no business with anything of that sort, and nothing of that sort has any business with him. My friend, the poor man, in my district, is my business. I assume a paternal character towards my friend. I say, my good fellow, I will treat you paternally. Toby listened with great gravity and began to feel more comfortable. Your only business, my good fellow, pursued Sir Joseph, looking abstractly at Toby. Your only business in life is with me. You needn't trouble yourself to think about anything. I will think for you. I know what is good for you. I am your perpetual parent. Such is the dispensation of an all-wise providence. Every New Year's Day, myself and friends will drink his health. Once every year, myself and friends will address him with the deepest feeling. And when he sinks into his comfortable grave, then, my lady, Sir Joseph blew his nose, I will be a friend and a father, on the same terms, to his children. Toby was greatly moved. Oh, you have a thankful family, Sir Joseph, cried his wife. My lady, said Sir Joseph quite majestically, ingratitude is known to be the sin of that class. I expect no other return. Born bad, thought Toby. Nothing melts us. What man can do, I do, pursued Sir Joseph. I do my duty as the poor man's friend and father. I endeavour to educate his mind by inculcating on all occasions the one great moral lesson which that class requires, that is, entire dependence on myself. With that great sentiment, he opened the alderman's letter and read it. Very polite and attentive, I am sure, exclaimed Sir Joseph. My lady, the alderman is so obliging as to remind me that he has had the distinguished honour, he is very good, of meeting me at the house of our mutual friend Deedles the banker. He does me the favour to inquire whether it will be agreeable to have Will Fern put down. Most agreeable, replied my Lady Bowley. The worst man among them. He has been committing robbery, I hope. No, said Sir Joseph, referring to the letter, not quite. Very near, not quite. He came up to London, it seems, to look for employment, and having found at night asleep in a shed, was taken into custody and carried next morning before the alderman. The alderman observes very properly that he is determined to put this sort of thing down, and that if it will be agreeable to me to have Will Fern put down, he will be happy to begin with him. Let him be made an example of, by all means, returned the lady. Coughed Sir Joseph. Mr. Fish, if you'll have the goodness to attend. Mr. Fish immediately seized his pen and wrote from Sir Joseph's dictation. Private. My dear sir, I am very much indebted to you for your courtesy in the matter of the man William Fern, of whom I regret to add I can say nothing favourable. I have uniformly considered myself in the light of his friend and father, but having been repaid, a common cause, I grieve to say, with ingratitude and constant opposition to any plans, he is a turbulent and rebellious spirit. Under these circumstances, it appears to me, I own, that when he comes before you again, as you inform me, he promised to do tomorrow, pending your inquiries, and I think he may so far be relied upon, his committal for some short time as a vagabond would be a service to society, and would be a salutary example in a country where, for the sake of those who are through good and evil report, the friends and fathers of the poor, as well as with a view to that, generally speaking, misguided class themselves, examples are greatly needed, and I am, and so forth. It appears, remarked Sir Joseph, when he had signed this letter and Mr. Fish was sealing it, as if this were ordained, really. At the close of the year, I wind up my account and strike my balance, even with William Fern. Trotty, who had long ago relapsed from his very low spirit, had stepped forward with a rueful face to take the letter. With thy compliments and thanks, said Sir Joseph. Stop! Stop! Echoed Mr. Fish. You have heard, perhaps, said Sir Joseph oracularly, certain remarks into which I have been led respecting the solemn period of time at which we have arrived, and the duty imposed upon us of settling our affairs and being prepared. You have observed that I don't shelter myself behind any superior standing in society, but that Mr. Fish, that gentleman, has a checkbook at his elbow, and is in fact here to enable me to turn over a perfectly new leaf and enter on the epoch before us with a clean account. Now, my friend, can you lay your hand upon your heart and say that you also have made preparations for a new year? Oh, I'm afraid, sir, stammered Trotty, looking meekly at him, that I am a little behindhand with the world. Behindhand with the world? Repeated Sir Joseph Bowley in a tone of terrible distinctness. I'm afraid, sir, faltered Trotty, as a matter of 10 or 12 shillings owed to Mrs. Chickenstalker. To Mrs. Chickenstalker? Repeated Sir Joseph in the same tone as before. Shop, sir, exclaimed Toby, in the general line. Also, a little money on account of rent. Very little, sir. It oughtn't to be owing, I know, but we have been very hard put to it indeed. Sir Joseph looked at his lady, and at Mr. Fish, and at Trotty, one after another, twice all round. He then made a despondent gesture with both hands at once, as if he gave the thing up altogether. Oh, man, even among this improvident and impracticable race, an old man, a man grown grey, can look a new year in the face with his affairs in this condition. How he can lie down on his bed at night and get up again in the morning and, there, he said, turning his back on Trotty, take the letter. Take the letter. I heartily wish it was otherwise, sir, said Trotty, anxious to excuse himself. We have been tried very hard. Sir Joseph still repeating, take the letter, take the letter. And Mr. Fish not only saying the same thing, but giving additional force to this request by motioning the bearer to the door. He had nothing for it but to make his bow and leave the home. And then the street, where Trotty pulled his worn old hat down on his head to hide the grief he felt, getting no hold on the new year anywhere. He didn't even lift his hat to look up at the bell tower when he came to the old church on his return. He halted there a moment from habit, knew that it was growing dark and that the steeple rose above him, indistinct and faint in the murky air. He knew, too, that the chimes would ring immediately and that they sounded to his fancy at such a time like voices in the clouds. But he only made the more haste to deliver the alderman's letter and get out of the way before they began, for he dreaded to hear them tagging friends and fathers to the burden they had wrung out last. Toby discharged himself of his commission, therefore, with all possible speed, and set off trotting homeward. But what with his pace, which was at best an awkward one in the street, and what with his hat, which didn't improve it, he trotted against somebody in less than no time, and was sent staggering out into the road. "Oh, beg your pardon, I'm sure," said Trotty, pulling up his hat in great confusion, and between the hat and the torn lining, flaring his head into a kind of beehive. "I hope I haven't hurt you." As to hurting anybody, Toby was not such an absolute Samson, but that he was much more likely to be hurt himself, and indeed he had flown out into the road like a shuttlecock. He had such an opinion of his own strength, however, that he was in real concern for the other party. The man against whom he'd run, a sun-browned, sinewy, country-looking man with grizzled hair and a rough skin, gazed at him for a moment as if he suspected him to be in jest. But satisfied of his good faith, he answered, "No, friend, you've not hurt me." "Nor the child, I hope," said Trotty. "Nor the child," returned the man. "Thank you kindly." As he said so, he glanced at a little girl he carried in his arms, asleep. And shading her face with the long end of the poor handkerchief he wore about his throat, went slowly on. The tone in which he said, "I thank you kindly," penetrated Trotty's heart. He was so jaded and footsore, and so soiled with travel, and looked about him so forlorn and strange, that it was a comfort to him to be able to thank anyone, no matter for how little. Toby stood gazing after him as he plodded wearily away with the child's arm clinging round his neck. At the figure in the worn shoes, now the very shade and ghost of shoes, rough leather leggings, common frock, and broad slouched hat, Trotty stood gazing, blind to the whole street, and at the child's arms clinging round its neck. Before he merged into the darkness, the traveller stopped, and looking round and seeing Trotty standing there, yet seemed undecided whether to return or go on. After doing first the one, then the other, he came back, and Trotty went halfway to meet him. "You can tell me, perhaps," the man said with a... Sorry. Hold on. Let's see if I can get a little bigger font. "You can tell me, perhaps," said the man with a faint smile. "And if you can, I'm sure you will. I'd rather ask you than another. Where Alderman Cute lives." "Close at hand," replied Toby. "I'll show you his house with pleasure." "I was to have gone to him elsewhere tomorrow," said the man, accompanying Toby, "but I'm uneasy under suspicion, and I want to clear myself, and to be free to go and seek my bread. I don't know where, so maybe you'll forgive my going to his house tonight." "It's impossible," cried Toby with a start. "Your name's Fern?" "Eh?" cried the other, turning on him in astonishment. "Fern? Will Fern?" said Trotty. "That's my name," replied the other. "What then?" said Trotty, seizing him by the arm and looking cautiously round. "For heaven's sake, don't go to him, don't go to him. He'll put you down, as sure as you ever were born. Here, come up this alley, I'll tell you what I mean. Don't go to him." His new acquaintance looked as if he thought him mad, but he bore him company nevertheless. When they were shrouded from observation, Trotty told him what he knew, and what character he'd received, and all about it. "It's true enough, in the main," he said. "Master, I could sift grain from husk here and there, but let be as 'tis. What odds? For myself, master, I never took with that hand," holding it before him, "what wasn't my own. I never held it back from work, however hard or poorly paid. Whoever can deny it, let him chop it off. When work won't maintain me like a human creature, when my living is so bad that I'm hungry out of doors and in, when I see all work in life begin that way, go on that way, and end that way, without a chance or a change, well, then I say to the gentlefolks, keep away from me, let my cottage be. My doors is dark enough without your darkening of them more. We've nothing to do with one another. I'm best let alone." Seeing that the child in his arms had opened her eyes and was looking about her in wonder, he checked himself to say a word or two of foolish prattle in her ear and stand her on the ground beside him. Then, slowly winding one of her long tresses round and round his rough forefinger like a ring, while she hung about his dusty leg, he said to Trotty, "I'm not a cross-grained man by nature, I believe, and easily satisfied, I'm sure. I bear no ill will against none of 'em. I only want to live like one of the Almighty's creatures. I can't I don't. So there's a pit dog between me and them that can and do. There's others like me. I might tell 'em off by hundreds, by thousands sooner than by ones. I've got a bad name this way, and I'm not like that. I'm afeard to get a better. 'Tain't lawful to be out of sorts, and I am out of sorts, though God knows I'd sooner bear a cheerful spirit if I could. Well, I don't know as this alderman could hurt me much by sending me to jail, but without a friend to speak a word for me, he might do it. And you see, pointing downward with his finger at the child, she has a beautiful face, said Trotty. Why, yes, replied the other in a low voice as he gently turned it up with both his hands toward his own, looked upon it steadfastly. I've thought so many times. I've thought so when my heart was very cold and cupboard very bare. Thought so till the night when we were taken like two thieves. But they shouldn't try the little face too often, should they, Lillian? It's hardly fair upon a man. He sunk his voice so low and gazed upon her with an air so stern and strange that Toby, to divert the current of his thought, inquired if his wife were living. I never had one, he returned, shaking his head. She's my brother's child, an orphan. 9-year-old, though you'd hardly think it. She's tired and worn out now. Her mother had a friend once in London here. We're trying to find her, and to find work too. But it's a large place. Never mind. More room for us to walk about in, Lily. Meeting the child's eyes with a smile which melted Toby more than tears, he shook him by the hand. I don't so much as know your name, he said, but I've opened my heart free to you. For I'm thankful to you. With good reason, I'll take your advice and keep clear of this, Justice, suggested Toby. Ah, he said, if that's the name they give him, this Justice. Huh. And tomorrow, we'll try whether there's better fortune to be met with somewheres near London. Good night. Oh, and Happy New Year. Stay, cried Trotty, catching at his hand to relax his grip. Stay. The New Year never can be happy to me if we part like this. The New Year never can be happy to me if I see the child and you go wandering away, you don't know where, without a shelter for heads. Come home with me. I'm a poor man, living in a poor place, but I can give you lodging for one night and never miss it. Come home with me. Here, I'll take her, said Trotty, lifting up the child. A pretty one. I'd carry 20 times her weight and never know I'd got it. Oh, tell me what I go do quick for you. I'm very fast, always was. Trotty said this, taking about 6 of his trotting paces to one stride of his fatigued companion, with little thin legs quivering again beneath the load he bore. Why, she's as light, said Trotty, trotting in his speech as well as his gait, for he couldn't bear to be thanked and dreaded a moment's pause. As light as a feather, lighter than a peacock's feather, a great deal lighter. Here we are and here we go. Round its first turn into the right, Uncle Will, and past the pub and sharp off the passage to the left. Right opposite the public house, here we are, and here we go. Down the mews here, Uncle Will, and stop at a black door with T-Vet ticket porter, writ upon a board. Here we are, and here we go, and here we are indeed, my precious. Meg, surprising you. With which words Trotty, in a breathless state, set the child down before his daughter in the middle of the floor. Little visitor looked once at Meg, and doubting nothing in that face, but trusting everything she saw there, ran into her arms. Here we are, and here we go, cried Trotty, running around the room and choking audibly. Here, Uncle Will, here's a fire, you know. Why don't you come to the fire? Here we are, and here we go. Meg, my precious darling, where's the kettle? Here it is, and here it goes. It'll boil in no time. Trotty really had picked up the kettle somewhere or other in the course of his wild career and now put it on the fire, while Meg, seating the child in a warm corner, knelt down on the ground before her and pulled off her shoes and dried her wet feet on a cloth. And she laughed at Trotty, too, so pleasantly, so cheerfully that Trotty could have blessed her where she kneeled, for he'd seen that when they entered she was sitting by the fire in tears. Father, said Meg, you're crazy tonight, I think. I don't know what the bells would say to that. Poor little feet, how cold they are. Oh, they're warmer now, exclaimed the child. They're quite warm now. No, said Meg, we haven't rubbed them half enough. The child, in a burst of sobbing, clasped her round the neck, caressed her fair cheek with its hand, and said, Oh, Meg, oh, dear Meg. Toby's blessing could have done no more. Who could do more? My father, cried Meg after a pause. Here I am, and here I go, my dear, said Trotty. goodness gracious me, he's put a dear child's bonnet on a kettle and hung the lid behind the door. I didn't go for to do it, my love, said Trotty, hastily repairing this mistake. Meg, my dear. Trotty conveyed in dumb show unintelligible narratives of how and when and where he'd found their visitors to Meg, and they were happy. Very happy. Oh no, thought Trotty sorrowfully as he watched Meg's face. That match is broken off, I see. Now, I'll tell you what, said Trotty after tea. The little one, she sleeps with Meg, or no? With good Meg, cried the child, caressing her. With Meg? That's right, said Trotty. I shouldn't wonder if she kisses Meg's father, won't she? I'm Meg's father. Mightily delighted Trotty was when the child went timidly towards him and, having kissed him, fell back upon Meg again. Will Fern, you come along with me. You're tired to death and broken down for want of rest. You come along with me. It's not much of a place. Only loft. But having a loft, I always say, it's one of the great conveniences of living in a mews. Until there's coach house and stable, that's about a let, we live here cheap. There's plenty of sweet hay up here, belonging to a neighbour, and it's clean as hands, and Meg can make it. Cheer up, don't give way. New heart for the new year, always. So Trotty, talking without intermission, led him out as tenderly and easily as if he had been a child himself. Returning before Meg, he listened for an instant at the door of her little chamber, an adjoining room. The child was murmuring a simple prayer before lying down to sleep, and when she remembered Meg's name, dearly, dearly, so her words ran, Trotty heard her stop and ask for his. It was some time before the foolish little old fellow could compose himself to mend the fire and draw his chair to the warm hearth, but when he had done so and had trimmed the light, he took his newspaper from his pocket and began to read, carelessly at first, skimming up and down the columns, but with an earnest and sad attention very soon. For this same dreaded paper redirected Trotty's thoughts into the channel they had taken all that day, which the day's events had so marked out and shaped. His interest in the two wanderers had set him on another course of thinking, and a happier one for a time, but being alone again and reading of the crimes and violences of the people, he relapsed into his former train. In this mood, he came to an account, and it was not the first he'd ever read, of a woman who had laid her desperate hands not only on her own life, but on that of her young child. A crime so terrible and so revolting to his soul, dilated with the love of Meg, let the journal drop and fell back in his chair appalled. Unnatural and cruel, Toby cried. Unnatural and cruel. Number of people who were bad at heart, born bad, who had no business on the earth, could do such deeds. It's true. All I've heard today. Too just, too full of proof. We're bad. Chimes took up the words so suddenly, burst out so loud and clear and sonorous that the bells seemed to strike him in his chair. And what was that they said? Toby Veck, Toby Veck, waiting for you, Toby. Toby Veck, Toby Veck, waiting for you, Toby. Come and see us, drag him to us, drag him to us. Haunt and hunt him, haunt and hunt him. Break his slumbers, Toby Veck, Toby Veck. Door open wide, Toby. Toby Veck, door open wide, Toby. Then fiercely back to their impetuous strain again, ringing in the very bricks and plaster on the walls. Toby listened. Fancy. Was remorse having run away from him that afternoon? No, nothing of the kind. Again, and yet a dozen times again. Haunt and hunt him, haunt and hunt him. Drag him to us, deafening the whole town. Meg, said Trotty softly, tapping her heart, do you hear anything? I heard the bells, father. Surely they're very loud tonight. Is she asleep? Said Toby, making an excuse for peeping in, so peacefully and happily. I can't leave her there, though, father. Look how she holds me hand. Meg, whispered Trotty, listen to the bells. She listened with a face towards him all the time, but it underwent no change. She didn't understand them. Trotty withdrew, resumed his seat by the fire, and once more listened by himself. He remained here a little time. It was impossible to bear it. The energy was dreadful. If the tower door is really open, said Toby, hastily laying aside his apron, but never thinking of his hat, what's to hinder me from going up into the steeple and satisfying myself? If it's shut, I don't want any other satisfaction, that's enough. He was pretty certain, as he slipped out quietly into the street, that he should find it shut and locked, for he knew the door well, and so rarely seen it open that he couldn't reckon above 3 times in all. What was his astonishment when, coming bareheaded to the church and putting his hand into this dark nook, he found the door actually stood ajar. He thought on the first surprise of going back, or of getting a light, or a companion. But his courage aided him immediately, and he determined to ascend alone. "What have I to fear?" said Trotty. "It's a church. Chance of ringers may be there, and I forgot to shut the door." So he went in, feeling his way as he went like a blind man, for it was very dark, and very quiet, for the chimes were silent. The narrow stair was so close to the door that he stumbled at the very first, and shutting the door upon himself by striking it with his foot and causing it to rebound back heavily, he couldn't open it again. This was another reason, however, for going on. Trotty groped his way and went on. Up, 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 and round, and round, and up, up, higher, 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 up. It was a disagreeable staircase for that groping work, so low and narrow that his groping hand was always touching something, and it often felt so like a man, or ghostly figure, standing up erect and making room for him to pass without discovery, that he would rub the smooth wall upward, searching for its face, and downward, searching for its feet, while a chill tingling crept all over him. Twice or thrice a door or niche broke the monotonous surface, and then it seemed a gap as wide as the whole church. And he felt on the brink of an abyss, going to tumble headlong down, until he found the wall again. Still, up, 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 and round, and up, 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 higher, higher, higher up. At length the dull and stifling atmosphere began to freshen, presently to feel quite windy. Presently it blew so strong that he could hardly keep his legs, but as he got to an arched window in the tower, breast high, and holding tight, looked down upon the housetops, on the smoking chimneys, on the blur and blotch of lights, towards the place where Meg was wondering where he was and calling to him, perhaps, all kneaded up together in a leaven of mist and darkness. This was the belfry where the ringers came. He caught hold of one of the frayed ropes which hung down through apertures in the oaken roof. At first he started, thinking it was hair, then trembled at the very thought of waking the deep bell. The bells themselves were higher. Higher, Trotty, in his fascination, or in working out the spell upon him, groped his way by ladders now, and toilsomely, for it was steep, and not too certain holding for the feet. Up, 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 and climber, up, higher, higher, higher up, until, ascending through the floor and pausing with his head just raised above its beams, he came among the bells. It was barely possible to make out their great shapes in the gloom, but there they were, shadowy and dark and dumb. A heavy sense of dread and loneliness fell instantly upon him as he climbed into this airy nest of stone and metal. His head went round and round. He listened, and then raised a wild "Hello! Hello!" was mournfully protracted by the echoes. Giddy, confused, and out of breath, and frightened, Toby looked about him vacantly and sank down in a swoon. And that's the end of chapter 2. Back tomorrow with the 3rd chapter.